Hello. As you can see, we've had a little bit of a change of scene here. Um, the move is finally complete. I've relinquished my SoCal boy card for a NorCal boy card. I ditched like the beaches and the traffic for Redwoods, rain. I mean, I guess San Francisco has like traffic too, but we don't live in San Francisco. We live a little bit out of the city. But yeah, my girl and I finally, got our own place up here. It's a house now. It's not an apartment, and we're not living with family anymore. So, I love, the feeling of like settling in and like dressing up your living space to exactly how you want it. But I think not right now, but like 3 to 6 months down the line, we're gonna. I think maybe like doing like a little studio tour once I like have like a bunch of like all my knickknacks that I want and all that stuff, so I can show you like my physical um, art space process thingy. But today we're not doing physical, we're doing mental, behavioral, and I'm going to be showing you my artistic process. So what exactly does it look like to go from a blank canvas to a sketch to color to finished piece? I'm going to go through with that with y'all today, but before we get started, I want to do like a quick disclaimer. I'm a digital artist. My program of choice is Procreate. Occasionally I'll do like Clip Studio Paint, but a lot of the tips I'm gonna talk about will be more straightforward if you are also a digital artist who works at Procreate. The core concepts are pretty applicable, if you're working in Photoshop or other programs. They use like similar features, but it's not going to be as straightforward. All right, with that out of the way, let's delve into it. All right, step one, sketching. Now this is the longest part of my process, and it's because what I'm doing here is I'm laying the foundation, the groundwork for the entire piece that it's based upon. And what I try to focus on this part is like stuff like composition, gesture, anatomy, getting the proportions right. You ever seen a piece of art that's fantastically rendered and the colors look great, but you take a close look and the proportions are off, or maybe the anatomy is kind of taking you out of the enjoyment of the piece? Something is askew and it's a minor thing, but it kind of keeps drawing your attention and spoiling it for you. That's what I mean. I'm trying to avoid stuff like that in my art. And all that stuff you can really nip at the bud at the beginning. I'm not saying every piece of art, has to be perfect. Not by any means. But at the very least, I want to have a rock solid foundation for my artwork. So this part takes the longest for me in my process. And this may be different for other artists. If you're someone that's very good at improvisation, someone who's quick on your toes, I can imagine this part isn't as drawn out. Personally, I like doing most of the heavy lifting at the beginning, so I don't have to retrace my steps and do major changes later down the line when I'm coloring or rendering out the piece. They say artists can be perfectionists, and I think that's true, but it's not for no reason. I think it's normal to care deeply about something you work so hard on. Care is based on love and appreciation. And as artists, our art speaks for us, and we want to make sure our message doesn't get misconstrued. We care about how our art looks and how it comes off to people, so that's where that perfectionism stems from. That being said, perfectionism can be a problem to the point where it impedes creation, and that's obviously not good. We don't want that. Anyways, I usually spend this time gathering references. These can come from anywhere like Instagram, Pinterest, art books, whatever. Whether it's for the gesture, colors, mood, whatever I like about other art that I want to incorporate in my piece, I make sure to have it ready. From there, I usually sketch out some quick thumbnail sketches to get the overall look of it. Once I like one, I go in that direction and mess around with it from there. Just build upon it from there. Lately, I've been trying to make it a habit to sketch in my sketchbook lately. And that's to avoid eye strain, staring at screens, because those are important for us artists. I sketch on paper and then I take a photo and digitize it. Open it up in Procreate and build upon it from there. So sometimes I'll take a photo with my iPad. Sometimes it can be a little awkward doing that, so I'll just do it on my phone, airdrop it to my iPad, and boom, there you go. Once I have a sketch I'm pretty satisfied with, I move on to my next step, which is line art. I start by making a new layer and label it accordingly. This is one of the quicker steps, and it's pretty straightforward. I'm just tracing my sketch with some cleaner lines, making it look pretty, but not too pretty. Because that brings me to an important point, line variation. Line variation is important. Line variation is a simple principle that says variety in your lines is key to making your art feel more natural and not so stiff. A drawing where all lines hold the same weight can come off as sterile and lifeless. Additionally, sometimes I color my line art. For this, I alpha lock my layer and go to town. Alpha locking just confines your strokes to pixels you've already drawn. To do this, just select your layer and turn on alpha lock. As for when I choose to color my line art, I usually do so for lighter colors like yellows or whites, or I'll even color skin line art if it's skin on skin to give it a softer look. Another quick tip is the mask feature. Masks are, I think, an essential concept to understand as a digital artist, because they've saved my ass so many times when it comes to experimenting with my pieces. Basically, if I want to tweak line art a bit without having to commit to erasing, I'll just make a mask, which makes a layer within the layer that I can turn on and off. Like alpha locking, this only affects pixels that I've laid down, but this time I have a separate disposable layer I have to work with. And when I'm happy with what I have, I just combine the mask layer with the layer below it, and you're good to go. Oh, and by the way, masks only work when black or white is selected. Black applies the mask and white deletes the mask. I feel like masks can be explained better than that. I'm certainly no teacher, but I'm just saying it this way for brevity's sake. I feel like this is also something that becomes clearer the more you use it. TLDR, masks are like low commitment erasing. All right, after line art, it's time for colors. Step 3 is coloring. We've reached the halfway point of my artistic process here, and we're starting simple, and we're just doing flat colors. Rendering, we're not worrying about that right now. We're gonna take care of that later down the line. A quick tip for you, this only works if you don't have any gaps in your line art, but once I'm ready to color, I make a color layer, label it, select my line art layer, pick the automatic selection tool, select the negative space, that's important, negative space, then I invert it. Go back and select my color layer and fill that layer. Boom, you just saved yourself a bunch of trouble coloring. The entire positive space is filled, which we'll use as a base moving forward. But hold on, we're not done here. From here, I make a clipping mask, which allows me to experiment with the foundation I have for my colors. Clipping masks are basically layers that attach to other layers. Like regular masks, clipping masks allow me to paint, draw color in my layer that I have that wrapped onto the pixels onto the layer beneath it. So clipping masks are dependent layers, just remember that. To make a clipping mask, just make a layer above your layer, select it, choose clipping mask, and you're all set. If you want to turn off the clipping mask, you can. Just select it and turn it on and off. So basically, I never have just one layer where all my colors are. I have like a base layer, and then from there I build upon it with clipping masks. But if I'm, running up the amount of layers I have, obviously I'll just like merge it down when I'm ready down the line. And there we go, that's about it for my coloring process. After all this, I'm usually at about, I want to say like 4 layers in, but now it's time to play around with lighting and move on to rendering. Step 4 is rendering. With line art and colors out of the way, we've now reached the home stretch onto rendering and effects later on. Here, I don't have as much of a stricter process. It's usually, I just start with like doing shadows first, then highlights second. And then the two are separated by their own layers. Shadows, I usually start simple and adjust opacity, paint with black, set the layer mode to soft light. Wait. Okay. Hold on. If you're all about color theory, I understand. I can hear you guys screaming from the other side. Just hold on, just calm down. I know this method isn't ideal. For me, it's just a starting point. Obviously, this method won't look good in every situation. Lighter colors, for example, don't really show shadows this way. So here's where I would just... it gets kind of messy here. I'll make another layer, and then I'll just, render it with shadows accordingly. It's a bit of a mess, I understand. But I don't know, this is just, what I do right now. Ideally, after all this is done, I should maybe have 1, maybe 2, shadow layers if I'm messy. I would like to think down the line here I would only have 1. Highlights come after. I've got nothing to add here. It's pretty straightforward. Just make sure to add some juicy highlights in the eyes. It gives some soul to the subject. And we're done with rendering for now. And with that, we should be about 6 layers in and moving on to our last step, the quickest step. Lastly, we have step 5, details. Details, effects. I usually just call it details. Details take up anywhere between 1 to 3 layers, but they don't have a lot going on. Just minor touch-ups. Here, I mess with the adjustments feature in Procreate and add whatever I think the piece needs. Some personal faves of mine are motion blur and noise. Noise can give your piece a nice feeling of texture to it if you feel like your piece is missing, a little bit of that. If it's looking a little too clean, a little too sterile, boom. And with all that, it should be about done. Layer-wise, we should have about 7 to 8 layers, maybe 10 if I have a background. Turnaround time for me depends. Obviously, portraits and busts taking about like 1 hour, half body pieces, maybe like 3 hours, and then full body pieces, more detailed pieces with backgrounds, fall about around the 5-hour mark. By the way, if you want your own artwork made by yours truly, I'm currently, as of March 2024, this month, open for commissions. So hit the link in the description. Support your boy. And there you have it. That's a look at the behind the scenes of what goes on in my brain when I make some art. Truthfully, with the whole moving process the past month, I feel like I've been a lot less creative than I normally would be, and that's that's understandable. Creativity comes and goes. I spend the past day or two, actually I spend the past day or two dusting off my Cintiq back there and drawing in Clip Studio again. So I'm having fun doing that. Additionally, I imagine as I settle in, I'll get more comfortable and draw more often. Obviously, started to get involved in the local art scene here in town. After just getting involved with the scene in LA, but that's life, you gotta adjust and be willing to change, because what's that Keith Haring quote? To be a victim of change is to ignore its existence, something like that. So best to remind yourself of that. But yeah, how does your creative process look like? Does it look like mine? Nothing at all? Comment down below, chime in, let's talk about it. I want to thank everyone again for watching. Thanks for sticking around the hiatus. But the train's back on the tracks, and I'll see you again in April. All right, stay creative. See ya.